Okay, my study was about making Africa in empowering women. Oh, sorry. Empowering her women through microfinance, and the case of BRAC in Kabarole district. This is in Uganda, in East Africa, and that is my name. This is the structure of my presentation. I will start with the definition of key concepts, the study background, problem statement, objectives of the study, the significance of the study, and then I will end with recommendations. Looking at the definition of some of the key concepts, this study looked at agency as the ability to engage in meaningful actions. And a microfinance in this study, the small loans which were offered to low-income people, especially women, and this was to enable them to engage in meaningful employment activities in order for them to improve their livelihoods. And empowerment in this study is looked at as a process of challenging existing power relations and at gaining control over resources. Looking at some of the small businesses that the women were looking at, were doing in my district, in Kabarole district, this is an example of what they were doing. Selling small produce, have tomatoes here, small vegetables, leafy vegetables, and here a man is engaging with a woman and try to buy. These are some of the activities that the women were doing in order for them to improve their livelihoods. Now, here I camouflage, and I'm looking for data from the streets, and some of the women are using their children to sell some of the produce on the market. Now, this is a study background in sub-Saharan Africa, and as well as many parts of Africa. Poverty is a global pandemic at 5%, and in sub-Saharan Africa, and as well as in many parts of the country, microfinance is looked at as a poverty alleviation tool. Now, looking at the public space, it was majorly dominated by men before the 20th century. But after the 20th century, we see women coming up, emerging in different public spaces. And microfinance is one of the spaces where the women have come, and they're engaging in different activities, borrowing in order for them to improve their livelihoods. Now, the problem in Uganda, poverty has been in the rise due to a number of factors. And some of those factors include growth rate, economic growth rate, the increase in food prices, the unequal distribution of resources. And these challenges have hit the women hard and has forced them into taking microfinance loans in order for them to improve their livelihoods. Now, despite the popularity and success of microfinance in the literature that I read and analyzed, there's a lot of poverty which continues to increase. And it is not very clear whether microfinance improve women's livelihoods. It is also not clear how the microfinance lending terms, how they affect women and how they help them to improve their livelihoods. So the purpose of the study was to investigate the impact of microfinance on women's livelihoods using BRAC microfinance in the Kabarole district. Now, the general objective was to investigate the extent of BRAC microfinance credit schemes on the impact on on women's borrowers' livelihoods in Kabarole district. Now, these are the specific objectives. Number one was to examine credit facilities that were offered by BRAC microfinance and those that were accessible to women. And number two objective was to look at the BRAC lending terms and how they affect the women access and the repayment of credit. Now, number three was to assess the extent to which BRAC microfinance credit facilities improve women's livelihoods. Now, looking at the theoretical framework, this study hinges on Sarah Longway's theoretical framework. Control. So at the end of the day, I should be able to analyze and see whether the women are able to use the 5 factors of empowerment as Sarah Longway puts them here. Now, Kabir also, the mode of empowerment, which includes resources, agency, and achievement. These two were used hand in hand as a measure, as a tool to understand women's engagement in the marketplace and how they were able to achieve all these factors of empowerment. As regards the methodology of the study, I used the cross-sectional study design. This was allowed me to collect data from the population at one point in time. The place of the study was Kabarole district in Western Uganda, that is in Africa, and the data was obtained from 120 women from 4 groups. The 2 groups were in the middle of the city of Fort Portal, and the two other groups were in far-flung areas in the rural setting in Kabarole district. In order to obtain a sample, I used simple random sampling as well as snowball sampling. These two worked hand in hand in the event that the women were not easy to be got. I spread and we're looking from one point of reference to help me to reach out to the other, to the next women, just like that. Now, data was collected using a survey, and here I used the questionnaire tool for interview guides, observation, and photography, as you have seen in some of the photos. As regards data analysis, I use quantitative data analysis methods, which included statistical packages for social sciences, including univariate, bivariate, multivariate. And in order to present my data, I use the tables, charts, and graphs. As regards, that is for quantitative data. For qualitative data, I used thematic analysis, verbative quotations, and discussions. The study also looked into consideration, the ethical considerations. For example, I did not reveal the names of the people that the women, the respondents, and also identified myself. I got a letter from the School of Gender Studies of Makerere University to introduce me to the women so that they could be able to be free to give out information the way they wanted it. As regards the finding, these are the findings, and they align with the major key of study objectives. And the objective was, number 1, was to examine the credit facilities that were offered by microfinance, which is BRAC. There were 2, majorly, there were 2 credit facilities, that is the group-based microloans as well as the individual loans. Now, at the time of the study, 100% of the women were engaged in group-based microloans. These are small loans that they could offer to the women that did not have. Majority were not able to obtain individual loans, which were big and they required very difficult, collateral. The collateral included land titles, the logbooks, and the women were not able to not have them. So they were using group-based micro loans. Objective number 2 was to assess the effect of BRAC lending terms on women. And some of the lending terms included processing fees, the transport costs, the evaluation fee, the interest rates, and so on and so forth. Now, these affected some of the women. 60% of the respondents they found it very, very hard to repay their loans because in a week, it was not easy that a woman would obtain a loan today and the next week they were able to pay the money. Also, transport costs affected the 60%. 31%, however, were very happy with the repayment terms because it gave them the urge to work hard and they think creatively. That is what the agency that Naira Kabir 2018 was talking about, that the women would be able to access at the same time, would be able to activate their agency to decide how to do and what to do with the money. And this helped them to maintain the membership as members of BRAC Microfinance. It is also important that I relate to some of the barriers that Kampala, and in this case, Kabarole, we're facing. For example, some of them included 29%. They complained about the bad weather, so the businesses were not doing well, and this was because of the bad weather, the rain. Whenever it rained, the women were not able to come out to sell their produce. And also 19% reported limited operational capital, and 14% reported few customers, like 9% lacked space. So these are some of the verbatims that the women were using, that the business was not running very well because of, the rain season and so on and so forth. Now, some of the coping mechanisms by women included this. They belonged, they formed, and Owawa meaning that they were able to obtain some money, to borrow money from the saving groups at the time that they were not able to pay back to BRAC microfinance. There was also use of children to sell a portion of the goods. The women were able to use their children, their own children, to go out and sell as a way of making ends meet. The women were also hawking goods from one place to another, and from one different, area, from one street to another, in a bid of looking for customers in the event that the customers were not able to come to their stalls. 73% of the women were able to persevere. This is what Abia was talking about, changing the existing relation, changing, the capacity to think and work out of the pandemic items at night. The event that they were not able to sell during the day, they were selling out at night, all in the bid of making ends meet. This study concludes the microfinance was able to help the women to access, navigate, and use the urban spaces. And these are the performance indicators, the indicators of empowerment that Kabir is talking about. Go out and challenge the existing protocol. The women also were saving in groups, and this is also another power indicator of empowerment. That means they were able to acquire skills such as leadership skills, financial literacy, and problems.